They say some stones hold secrets, but what if a jewel could bleed? Tonight, we uncover the chilling tale of the opal that wept blood, a relic cursed by betrayal, bound by hunger and powerful enough to end the world. Stay with me, because once the opal calls your name, there's no turning back. The first drop of blood slid down the surface of the stone, though no living thing was near enough to bleed. Deep within the crumbling crypt of Hollow, a hidden chamber groaned awake after centuries of silence. A young historian named Ilara Darvin had traveled farther than most dared, chasing whispers of a gemstone that was said to hold the memory of gods. Her lantern flickered against the moss-darkened walls, and every step echoed like a drumbeat in a tomb that had long forgotten the warmth of life. At the center of the chamber, atop a pedestal of cracked marble, lay the object of legend, the opal. It glowed faintly, a pale fire trapped within stone, but something about it was wrong. The surface was not smooth as she had imagined, but fractured as though the gem itself had endured torment. When Ilara reached for it, the air thickened. The lantern flame shuddered, casting wild shapes upon the walls, faces twisted in anguish, mouths stretched in silent screams. Her breath caught, but curiosity drove her hand forward. The moment her fingertips brushed the stone, the fracture in the opal pulsed. From the split seeped a droplet of thick crimson liquid. It was unmistakable. The opal was bleeding. Ilara stumbled back, her heart hammering. She wanted to believe her eyes had deceived her, that fatigue played cruel tricks, but no. Another bead of blood welled up, rolled down the gemstone, and struck the marble pedestal with a sound sharper than thunder in the silence. The blood pooled not on the stone floor, but in the air itself, hanging, twisting, defying gravity. The crimson mist gathered, forming the faint outline of a figure cloaked in shadow. Ilara Darvin, the voice rasped from the form, though she had never given her name aloud. You should not have woken me. Her lantern burst, plunging the chamber into an unnatural twilight. The opal's glow was now the only light, red and pale, shifting like a wound that refused to heal. Ilara's hands trembled, but she did not flee. She had crossed oceans, abandoned her post at the academy, and sacrificed every ounce of security to find the truth buried in myths. Who are you? She whispered. The figure leaned closer, its presence pressing down on her chest like iron chains. I am the first guardian, it said, and the blood you see is the price of betrayal. Ilara's breath grew shallow. If the myths were true, the opal was more than a relic. It was a prison, and with one touch she might have broken its seal. Far above, the crypt roof shuddered as though the world itself had taken notice. The guardian's form solidified, its eyes like molten coal. The stone will not stop bleeding, it warned, until the debt is paid in full. The ground rumbled beneath Ilara's feet, as though the crypt itself was breathing. Dust drifted from the vaulted ceiling, and the walls moaned under unseen strain. The guardian's burning eyes locked onto her, unblinking, heavy with centuries of anger and sorrow. Ilara clutched her satchel, mind racing with fragments of forgotten lore. None of the texts she had studied ever mentioned guardians that bled with the stone. You speak of debt, she managed, voice unsteady. What debt could endure beyond the fall of empires? The guardian's shadowy form rippled like smoke caught in a storm. The debt is older than empires, older than men. It was struck when the first hands reached for power not meant to be theirs. The opal was forged from the heart of a fallen star. It does not forgive theft. Ilara's pulse quickened. A fallen star? Yes, she had read those accounts, dismissed by the academy as fevered tales. But now she saw the truth bleeding before her. The stone was alive, and its wound was the wound of history itself. She forced her voice steady. Then why am I here? Why me? The guardian's molten gaze narrowed. Because you dared to seek. And the opal always answers those who seek it. Its memory latches to hunger, to ambition, to sacrifice. You are chosen, though not by your will. Chosen. The word pressed on her chest like an iron brand. She thought of her father's crumbling manuscripts, of the way her peers had mocked her obsession with fairy tales. She thought of the endless nights mapping half-erased symbols that led her here. Had it all been the opal's pull? The bleeding stone pulsed again, brighter, redder. The blood no longer dripped in droplets but streamed, pooling into lines across the floor, shaping symbols that burned like fresh wounds in the stone. The sight made Ilara's stomach twist. The guardian extended its hand, a shadowy limb tipped with clawed fingers. The opal binds through sacrifice. Blood for blood. To bear it is to bleed with it. Refuse and its curse will spread beyond these walls, drowning Hollow first. and then the world. Her mind reeled. To accept meant surrendering herself to something far beyond mortal understanding. To refuse meant unleashing a catastrophe. The air grew colder. She could hear faint whispers now, dozens, perhaps hundreds filling the chamber. They seeped from the bleeding opal, voices of those who had come before, trapped in the stone's memory. Some pleaded, others screamed. A few laughed in madness. Ilara's lantern lay shattered, yet her eyes burned as though aflame. The world narrowed to two choices: flee and condemn all, or stay and bind herself to the stone. The Guardian's final words cut the silence like a blade. The opal waits for your answer, but it will not wait long. The chamber grew darker, though the opal glowed brighter, as if consuming all other light. Ilara stood frozen, her heartbeat louder than the rumbling crypt. The Guardian's demand echoed in her mind, blood for blood. The floor's bleeding symbols glowed hotter, scarlet veins spreading outward like cracks across the stone. She knew if she waited too long, the choice would be made for her, by destruction. Her fingers trembled as she pulled a small knife from her satchel. It was an archaeologist's tool, not a weapon, its blade dulled by years of use. The idea of feeding her own blood to the stone sent terror, spiraling through her veins. But the whispers from the opal pressed harder, crowding her thoughts. Ilara, Ilara, they chanted in 100 broken tongues. Join us, bind it. End the debt. She clenched her jaw. End the debt. That was the promise. If there was a way to halt the curse, she had to seize it. With a swift breath, she pressed the blade against her palm. The sting was sharp but quick. Blood welled up, warm and startling against her skin. She extended her hand toward the opal. The moment her blood touched the cracked gemstone, the entire crypt shuddered. A flash of searing light burst from the fracture, and the shadows of the Guardian stretched violently across the chamber. The opal drank her blood greedily, pulling more than she had given, drawing not just from her palm but from her very essence. Her knees buckled. A cry tore from her throat as images flooded her mind. Flashes of ancient battles fought beneath alien skies. Kings kneeling before the stone. Rivers of blood spilled in its name. She saw the forging of the opal, itself, molten fire and cosmic tears, sealed into crystal, cursed with a hunger that could never be sated. Ilara Darvin, the Guardian's voice thundered, but now it sounded different, closer, almost inside her head. You are bound. The stone knows your blood. Its curse is your curse. Ilara gasped, clutching her chest. The bleeding had stopped, but the wound in her palm had not closed. Instead, her blood now shimmered faintly, as though infused with the opal's glow. What happens now? She whispered. The Guardian leaned closer, its form wavering like smoke around fire. Now you carry its burden. You will hear the cries of those lost within it. You will feel its hunger, and when the time comes, you will be the one to decide if it devours all or finally dies. The chamber stilled, but the silence was not peace, it was waiting. The whispers had not ceased. They pressed at the edge of her mind, demanding, pleading, luring. Ilara staggered to her feet, lantern shards crunching beneath her boots. The crypt's ancient doors groaned open by unseen force, revealing a staircase that spiraled into darkness. The path forward had been chosen. There was no turning back. The staircase seemed endless, spiraling into a throat of darkness that swallowed every sound. Ilara descended, her hand pressed against the cold wall for balance, though she could feel the faint throb of the opal's pulse in her blood. It was as if the stone had stitched itself into her veins, each heartbeat echoing with an alien rhythm. The whispers grew louder the deeper she went. At first they were fragmented cries, shards of voices, but soon they blended into a single chorus. They begged, they accused, they demanded. Some hissed her name with venom, others praised her as savior. At the base of the staircase she emerged into a cavern vast as a cathedral. Stalactites hung like black fangs from the ceiling, and rivers of red light pulsed through cracks in the rock, feeding into a central pit that glowed with a hellish brilliance. And at the heart of it lay a throne, not of gold or stone, but of bone. Twisted spines and skulls fused together as though molded by molten hands. Upon that throne sat no figure, only the lingering shadow of presence. Ilara, the whispers coiled around her mind. You are bound, and so you must feed us. Her stomach clenched. Feed. The word burned in her thoughts. She realized now the truth of the binding. The opal was not satisfied with her blood alone. It demanded more, always more. The guardian materialized again at the edge of the pit, its eyes twin embers in the dark. The opal hungers. It must drink to remain contained. That is the burden you now carry. Alara's throat tightened. Drink? From whom? The guardian tilted its head as though the question were foolish. From the living. From those who would not be missed. You are its vessel now. Through you, it will take. Her knees weakened. She had never killed, never even considered it. She was a seeker of knowledge, not a reaper of lives. No, she whispered fiercely. I won't be its executioner. The guardian's form quivered, its voice deepening. Then the opal will consume without restraint. It will bleed until the world itself drowns. You cannot deny it forever. Already it grows hungrier. As if in answer, the pit roared, and from its depths rose shapes, phantoms of those long devoured. Their hollow eyes fixed on her, mouths opening in silent screams. She felt their hunger clawing at her ribs, gnawing at her bones, demanding she obey. Ilara staggered back, clutching her chest. The opal burned within her veins, a fire that would not cool. She realized with sickening clarity that every step forward meant feeding the stone or finding the impossible. Way to destroy it. Her breath trembled. There has to be another way. The guardian's ember eyes flared. Then you must seek the second opal. Only together can they be broken. The cavern shook and the whispers turned from hunger to laughter. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. A second opal. The thought turned her veins to ice. The guardian's ember eyes glowed brighter, casting shadows across the cavern of bone and blood. One stone binds, it rumbled, but two together may unmake. Yet beware, seeker, the second opal does not sleep. It waits. The words twisted in her mind like barbed wire. If the bleeding stone was already unbearable, what horrors would a second hold? Still, a fragile spark ignited within her. Hope. If there was a way to end this curse, she would find it, even if it killed her. She ascended from the cavern, her body weak but her resolve unbroken. Above ground, the world had already begun to change. Eld Hollow's sky was bruised crimson, clouds rolling as though torn from within. The townspeople staggered in the streets, clutching their heads, haunted by whispers she alone understood. The opal was leaking into them, tasting, searching. She could not allow it to spread. Guided by fragments of vision the opal forced into her mind, she journeyed through the drowned marshlands east of Eld Hollow. Nights blurred into days, each step hounded by voices in her skull. She no longer needed food nor rest. The opal sustained her, though at the cost of her humanity. Her reflection in the water showed eyes faintly glowing red, and blood that shimmered faintly when it dripped from her wounds. At last she found it, a temple sunken into the marsh, its spires jutting like broken ribs from the earth. Inside, silence. Not whispers, silence deep and oppressive. And there it was, the second opal. Unlike the first, it did not bleed. It burned. A fire of pale blue danced within its core, steady and merciless. Even from a distance, Ilara felt its power clawing at her blood, calling to the bond the first opal had forged within her. Her knees trembled. If she touched it, would she be unmade? Or would the two stones together finally destroy each other? The guardian's voice echoed faintly, though it was not with her. Two stones, one choice. To bind them is to end them, but to end them is to end yourself. Ilara's chest tightened. She had always longed to leave her mark on history, to prove herself right. But this was no legacy, it was a sacrifice. She approached, her blood burning like fire in her veins. The whispers of the first opal grew frantic, shrieking in rage, begging her to stop. The blue fire of the second flared, reaching out like a hand. With trembling strength, Ilara pressed her bleeding palm against it. The two stones screamed, one of blood, one of fire, as their power clashed. Light engulfed the temple, shaking the marshlands, splitting earth and sky. The last thing Ilara felt was not fear but peace, for in that blinding moment the hunger finally ended, and Eld Hollow breathed free again. The whispers of the opal may have been silenced, but legends never truly die. If you felt its curse creeping into your bones, then let the story live on. Like this video, comment your thoughts on Ilara's fate, and subscribe so you never miss the next tale hidden in the shadows. Who knows? The next story may already be calling your name.